Hello, BookTube. It's Friday, and that means Friday Reads, when all of BookTube makes videos about what they're going to read and what they've just read and what they plan to read, what's on their docket right now. I love it. It's a finger on the pulse of what our reading is doing, a check-in every week. I just love those videos. And I have some videos, some books that I want to show you myself. I'm going to read a lot this week, and I've been reading a lot this week, as I do, as is my want. So there's a mixture here of new and old stuff. Like, for instance, this thing is old. We just saw it on my channel in a Brattle book haul. This is by David Bromwich, and it is Hazlit, The Mind of a Critic. It's a study that Bromwich does of William Hazlit, merely in his role as an essayist and a critic. That is a role he's largely remembered for. It's a role I revere him for. He's a fantastic writer. This book, unfortunately, turned out to be not only fairly dry, fairly academic prose. Can't really recommend it. It's a great subject, but I liked parts of it, but it was not an enjoyable reading experience. And not only that, but something I missed when I grabbed it from the Brattle, probably due to my excitement, is how heavily underlined it is. It's underlined, and fairly mindlessly. It's the person's underlining. He's not just underlining great points, but also individual words, individual phrases in a way that became distracting. So this is not sticking around. Unfortunately, it's too bad. It's certainly not coming in this room. Then another one, it was another reread. I found it on a shelf and realized that I'd set it aside on that shelf in order to reinforce the dust jacket. The dust jacket has seen better days. And this is an author that I love. This is a subject that I love. This is Robert Finch, Common Ground. And this is a selection of essays about Cape Cod that has, I believe this volume is illustrated. Let me see if I can get a full-page illustration for you. There are spot illustrations all throughout. Oh, I guess this doesn't have full-page illustrations. Okay, it doesn't. It just has spot illustrations. Like that. There's a washed-up jellyfish. And this is all about, Finch is an institution, and this is all about the nature of Cape Cod. Those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Massachusetts is a rectangle, a long, oblong rectangle, except for a hook, a fish hook, coming out into the Atlantic, and that fish hook is Cape Cod, and I know every inch of it. I have been to Cape Cod a million times. I know it like the back of my hand, except for all the human developments, but I know the natural history of Cape Cod very well, very well. I have paddled through every inch of every marsh on Cape Cod. I have paddled across every lake, every pond on Cape Cod, and all along the fenny borders of them, and every inch of wood, every inch of marsh, every inch of sandgrass and dunes everywhere. The natural world of Cape Cod I know really well. And these essays are all about that. Snowy owls, foxes, the life that you find in a marsh, a tidal marsh. That I love that sort of thing, and Finch does a great job at it. So I pulled this aside because I don't want to forget again to reinforce it. I want it in this room, and it's not because this cover is falling apart. But I will reread the whole thing, gladly. I will gladly reread the whole thing. Then there is another thing that's old, but it's also new in a way. This is one of the science fiction anthologies that I bought a lot during quarantine. This is New Dimensions #3, edited by Robert Silverberg, who is himself a great science fiction author. And this is a collection of short stories, and I when I got it a few weeks ago, or a week ago, I immediately looked to the table of contents to see which stories I knew. And this one has two that I know. The Ones That Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin, and The Girl Who Was Plugged In by James Tiptree. Two great short stories. But a lot of the rest of them here, I don't remember or have never read. Like Down There by Damon Knight. I've never been a big fan of Damon Knight. Maybe that will change. Let's see. Terry Carr, who was a great anthology editor, has a story in here called They Live on Levels. Barry Malzberg, another author I've never been a big fan of, has notes leading down to the Conquest. Gordon Eklund, who wrote a Star Trek novel. I think that Star Trek novel is the only thing by him I've ever read. Has a thing called The Three Comedians. Gardner Dozois, who is also who went on to become a great science fiction anthology editor, has The Last Day of July. It's interesting that Terry Carr and Gardner Dozois would both be in here. But the thing I like about the table of contents, aside from Ursula Le Guin and James Tiptree, is that it probably reflects Silverberg and his own preferences when it comes to science fiction, which are probably very different from my own. That's going to be fun. I'm just going to blast through all of those stories and see not only whether or not I like them, but what they tell me about what Silverberg in his prime thought was good science fiction. I wonder if they'll bear a lot in common. I'm trying to think off the top of my head if the Le Guin and the Tiptree stories have a lot in common. And aside from a theme of alienation, I don't see it. So I'd be interested to see if the rest of them do. Then there's another one here that's technically old. The copy that I have is brand new. It's a brand new condition. And it's part of a readathon. It's part of Stormalong 2020. A group of foolhardy booktubers have decided to do a gigantic read-along of Brandon Sanderson's gigantic Stormlight Archive books, starting with number 1, The Way of Kings, which is a gazillion pages long. And they're doing these, there are 3 Stormlight Archives books. They're all huge. And they're doing them one book every 2 months so that we finish up by the time the 4th book comes out in November. And the videos that have been cropping up are incredible. They are well worth your time to watch. And we are making our way through The Way of Kings. I am making my way through The Way of Kings. The reason there's no junk in this trade, in this mass market, is because I was making my way through The Way of Kings before I got this from a very forgiving publicist. And I was making my way through it on an iPad, on an electronic copy of the book, which takes up no space at all. So I don't even know, in this mass market, I'm not even sure where I am. I think I'm about almost halfway done with this first book, and loving it, absolutely loving it. I saw a comment, I think it might have been on one of the Stormalong booktube channels. If I remember, I'll leave a link to all the channels. They're well worth your time. I think I saw a comment somewhere, I think it was on one of their channels, to somebody saying that they were hundreds of pages in and nothing really had happened so far, but that wasn't a complaint. They were really enjoying it. And I'm getting that feeling myself. The part of me that's an editor is saying, oh, God almighty, this could have been 200 pages long. But the part of me that is a writer is just standing back in awe at what, is there anything that this guy can't make interesting? So I will try to leave a link to Stormalong stuff down below. But that's why I'm doing this weekend. And then the next 2 are new. I think we've seen both of them on this channel. This first one is by R.B. Bernstein. It's The Education of John Adams. It's a new book about America's second president, with the title obviously being a nod towards Henry Adams' great book, The Education of Henry Adams, one of the greatest works of nonfiction in American history. This I have been meaning, I dipped a toe in just a bit. I've read a large number of John Adams biographies, and I dipped a toe into this just to see, but I have not done any concerted reading in this. I really need to, because this is listed as a June release, and as far as I know, that's still true. I'll double check, but I don't have this on an immediate docket to write up anyway. But I'm pretty sure that this is still going to be a June release. And then the next one is also allegedly a June release. I will again double check. In this case, I'll double check far more pointedly because I am commissioned to review this. This is by Selena O'Grady, and it's called In the Name of God, The Role of Religion in the Modern World. Pretty thing that it's too bad, but I think this and The Education of John Adams, I think these will be the kinds of things. There'll be a whole era that I'll be able to look back on where I just don't get finished copies of books. I think I would like one for this. But I don't think it's going to happen. And this is, what do we have here? Never has this book been more timely. Religious intolerance, the resurgence of fundamentalism, hate crimes, repressive laws, and mass shootings are pervasive in today's world. The author asks how and why our societies came to be as tolerant or intolerant as they are, whether tolerance can be expected to heal today's festering wound between Islam and post-Christian West, or whether something deeper than tolerance is needed. I don't know what that means by post-Christian West, but, and again, I don't want to wade into deep waters or cause trouble, but Muslims in the Quran are directly enjoined to be intolerant towards non-believers. So are Christians in their own writings, but let's not, if you're saying the West is post-Christian, then post-Christian would mean tolerant towards a broad plenary view of religion. And that is not something you can describe Islam as having. But anyway, from Umar, the 7th century Islamic caliph who led what became the greatest empire the world has ever known, to King John of Magna Carta fame, who almost converted to Islam. From Ibn al-Wahhab, who created the religious military alliance of the House of Saud that still survives today, to the bloody 30 Years' War that cured Europe of murderous intra-Christian violence, but probably killed God in the process. I don't think so. The author takes the reader through the intertwined histories of Muslim, Christian, and Jewish faiths. So a big look at the Abrahamic religions. I have not given this the attention that it deserves because I need to master this thing in very little time. So that these are all on the immediate docket. But also another thing on the immediate docket, I don't think I have to. Oh yes, another thing that's on the immediate docket is ebooks. Random backlist ebooks. Quite a few of you are being very generous in sending me ebooks from your collections, and I really appreciate it. I really, really do. The constriction about not sending me a book definitely doesn't apply if it's simply an emailed file that causes you no trouble. You don't have to go to a post office for it or anything like that. That you're free to do that. EPUB files are working just fine on every device I have. PDFs, fairly fine. Mobi files, I'm having trouble with them. Even with Amazon, I'm having trouble with those. But EPUB, I'm having a number of people sending me a lot of EPUB files, and so as a result, I am being tempted every day with backlist titles that I would not have thought about. But now I have a copy, and I've got it on a device I love reading on, so I'll be doing quite a bit of that as well. But that is otherwise my Friday reads. You have In the Name of God. We have New Dimensions 3, one of the many anthologies that I got. We have Common Ground by the great Robert Finch. We have Hazlit, The Mind of a Critic, unfortunately not a recommend. We have The Education of John Adams, a new look at Adams' evolving thought. Not a full-dress biography, I'm getting the impression. And The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson, the first in the Stormlight archives. So that's my Friday reads, part of it anyway, plus all the iPad stuff. And as usual, I want to know what yours are. What are you doing? What are you reading this weekend? I love watching Friday Reads videos. I love hearing Friday Reads plans, so tell me all about it. But I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.